Glad to bring you international business news on Business Edge. My name is Lekon Onobanjo, and getting right into it, Britain's Trade Remedies Authority, TRA, has proposed dropping anti-dumping measures on Chinese reinforcement steel, saying more imports were needed to meet a fall in supply from other countries because of the war in Ukraine. The measures have been in place since 2016, but the TRA said maintaining them would not be in the economic interests of Britain, given high demand for the steel from its construction sector and a fall in supply from Russia, Belarus and Ukraine. The three countries supplied 27% of Britain's rebar imports in 2020 down to 2021, and this would likely drop substantially as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Britain's subsequent sanctions against Russia and Belarus. The European Union's body for dismantling failed banks said on Wednesday it would ratchet up pressure on lenders over the coming months to bolster their defenses so that none of them will remain too big to fail by January 2024. The Single Resolution Board, SRB, in its first heat map on progress in preventing failing banks from needing a taxpayer bailout, said that a shortfall in special debt issuance by banks to replenish burnt-out capital was down to 32.6 billion euros, or 0.45% of the total risk exposure. While most banks have met their target for issuing the special debt known as MREL, the SRB said some lenders still need to improve other elements which ensure smooth resolution or winding down if they go under. Oil prices fell in early trade after the International Energy Agency warned that the worst of the energy crisis is yet to come. IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol said countries were experiencing the first global energy crisis as international benchmark Brent crude shared 4.2% to trade at $102.59 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate was 4.4% down to $99.50 per barrel. This comes as U.S. President Joe Biden intensified efforts to lobby OPEC+, of which Russia is a member, to pump out more oil in an effort to tame surging energy prices. Only two cartel members, namely Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have the spare capacity to offset the potential market shortfall. Away from that, thousands of Panamanians took to the streets again to protest rising inflation and government corruption, despite the announcement of price cuts for fuel and some food products. President Laurentino Cortizo announced on Monday that the price of gasoline for private vehicles will be reduced to $3.95 per gallon from July 15, a drop of 24% from the price at the end of June. He also announced that his government will draft a decree to freeze the prices of a dozen essential food products. But several unions say that protests will continue until there is a general reduction in prices and gasoline rates drop below $3 per gallon. Now, the supplies of olive oil, risotto rice and passata are under threat as northern Italy suffers its worst drought in 70 years, stirring up the cost of living crisis further. Specialist importers are preparing for price rises for as much as 50% or more for rice and tomatoes, and are considering looking for new sources of supply after growers warned of a significant reduction in crop yields this year. Some market sources suggest Italian production of olive oil could be between 20 and 30% down on last year, and that there could be a substantial dent in global supply of the oil as hot and dry weather in Spain is expected to reduce crops there by up to 15%. Electricité de France, a French multinational electric utility company, had its shares surge after two sources revealed that the French government was poised to pay more than 8 billion euros, that's about $8 billion, to bring the power giant back under full state control. One of the sources said the cost of buying the 16% stake the French state does not own in EDF could approach 10 billion euros when accounting for outstanding convertible bonds and a premium to current market prices. Though EDF and the Economy Ministry have declined to comment on the report, JP Morgan said in a note that the price range will translate in an offer of between 10.2 to 12.7 euros per share, or a premium of up to 32% on Monday's close. And those are the business stories on the international scene. The next conversation will be coming up, and this time, while Benin Republic has made progress in addressing its economic issues, it has also gotten caught in the aftermath of COVID-19 and the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So we'll look at the new deal signed between Benin Republic and the International Monetary Fund after this break. In order to assist the West African country of Benin Republic to meet its urgent financial needs, the International Monetary Fund Executive Board approved a $638 million extended fund and extended credit facility for Benin under a 42-month agreement. The IMF said that the decision was to allow an immediate transfer of $143 million, which the government intends to utilize for budget support. Benin's economy, like those of other nations in the region, has been severely impacted by global shocks such as the coronavirus pandemic, the conflict in Ukraine, and the uptick in attacks by Islamist extremists in the country's north. So joining me from Lagos, Nigeria is Emmanuel Orji, securities trader, commercial partners. It's nice to have you, Emmanuel, join the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Now, 5 years ago, Benin embarked on a journey to modernize its economy and improve the well-being of its people. What progress would you say it made during that period? And what did Benin actually do in terms of getting it right as at that time?
Okay, so for Benin, I think the journey to modernizing the economy really started in 2016 after Patrice Talon was elected as the president back in 2016. And majority, a huge chunk of his tenure was largely skewed towards reforms. We saw reforms in the political sector, saw reforms in the art sector, social sector. In terms of the economic-wise, it was largely skewed towards infrastructure and electricity. In terms of infrastructure, he allocated roughly, within the space of 2016 to 2021, he allocated roughly 2 to 3 billion euros in terms of logistics and transportation. He also developed a new government body, the Benin Infrastructure Road Company, which was meant to maintain these infrastructures that they were creating. In terms of the electricity side of things, we saw them nationalize, we saw them privatize their electricity companies where they allow some private investors to come into play in that space as well. So them pay off their legacy debts in that space as well. Right. So a lot of reforms that we've seen during the Patrice Talon's tenure that has really improved ease of doing business in Benin Republic. We saw them moving 6 positions up in terms of ease of doing business index. We also saw them coming to the Eurobond market with strong investors appetite there as well. And even looking at the GDP post 2016, we saw that improve as well. Them growing roughly by 6% there as well. Even in COVID year, where a lot of SSA countries, South African countries recorded a decline, Benin Republic recorded a growth of 3.8, which was definitely quite impressive there as well. So I think the intention over the past 5 years have been there, the policies have been there, the reforms have been there, and currently they are still enjoying some of those benefits on the infrastructural basis as well.
No doubt that the reforms and policies put forward as at that time brought about significant progress in macroeconomic management and, of course, budget transparency, which in turn boosted investor confidence and culminated in the access to the international capital market between 2019 and 2021. But then what actually went wrong, or where did Benin actually go wrong to the point where it started to asking for financial assistance from the international body?
So I won't say they really went wrong in any way. A lot of countries currently are facing their sustainability issues, given how high use has become in the Eurobond markets. A lot of countries are also facing the backlash from the Russia-Ukraine crisis as well. And obviously looking at Benin Republic, like you mentioned earlier, the insecurity in the north is intensifying, which is making it very difficult to carry out economic activities. So at this point in time, we see a lot of African countries, likes of Ghana, likes of Kenya, likes of Egypt, going to IMF to request for some sort of relief, given the fact that they can't really access the international markets. And this is the same position Benin is currently in. They're trying to pretty much just meet some of their debt obligation in terms of the external debt servicing at this moment. And I think when given these agreements, I think Benin Republic will most likely be out of the way in terms of the financing need in near to medium term.
All right, Emmanuel, the IMF is providing assistance to Benin through the extended fund facility and, of course, the extended credit facility. So tell us, why these two programs, and what are they actually meant to achieve in terms of specifics?
Okay, so obviously looking at those two programs, they rightly fit into the current situation happening in Benin Republic. For the extended credit facility, this facility that's extended to low-income countries in order to boost growth, sustainable growth. For the extended fund facility, this is also facility to low-income countries. But however, these are countries going through structural impediments. Like you mentioned, these insecurity issues, the Russia-Ukraine crisis as well has derailed Benin Republic from those reforms and policies they're trying to implement as well. And one thing the external fund facility also does as well, it pretty much makes IMF an active member in terms of policy decision that Benin is going to be taking, given the time frame of this period as well. So it's not just them giving out relief as well, but also them providing policies in order to address those structural impediments that are currently seeing in Benin.
All right. Now, the IMF also mentioned that about $143 million will be used to support Benin's 2022 budget. So is this enough to manage the macroeconomic realities of the country, considering the challenges that it is faced with and that the country not being able to meet its deficit?
So for the amount, like I mentioned, the 143 million that IMF is going to disperse to Benin Republic, it should go some certain way. I think over the course of 2019 to date, Benin Republic has extended their external debt maturities, right? So you don't see any Eurobond happening this year, any Eurobond maturity happening this year. You don't see any Eurobond maturity happening next year. The next Eurobond maturity they have is until 2026, right? So they have that leeway to pretty much accommodate for those debt servicing up until 2026. So I think definitely looking at the IMF fund, definitely looking at the credits they're also going to get from other creditors, and also looking at their domestic issuance as well. I think in terms of near to medium term, that should be enough, at least, to ease investors' concern around possible defaults in Benin Republic.
All right, so finally, Emmanuel, Benin has raised about 500 million euros in Eurobond with a coupon of 4.9% following its 2019 experience. So tell us, with this new money that Benin is hoping to get, do you think that was Benin able to put that money in good use? And do you think this new fund coming in, Benin will also be able to put that also into prudent use?
Like I said, just obviously looking at their past spending behavior. The Eurobond issuance was, I think, 2021, the 500 million. The main purpose of that Eurobond issuance was to pretty much achieve their sustainability development goals, which is the SDG. Over the past couple of years, IMF has been largely strong on that front, right? Which has obviously given them a positive light in terms of investment destinations for foreign investors there as well. So I think this money will definitely be put into good use. One thing Benin Republic has been known for, because like I said, over the past 5 years has been infrastructural spending. They are largely big on infrastructural spending. You hardly see their debt, their spending composition skewed towards paying salaries. A lot of that is what goes into capital infrastructures, and particularly in terms of logistics and transportation front as well. So I'm quite optimistic that this fund would definitely go a long way for Benin Republic in order to maintain those strategic reforms that we have been seeing over time.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for joining the conversation this morning. Really appreciate it. And so with the IMF board approving a 42-month arrangement fund for Benin Republic to help address pressing financial needs, the revenue mobilization is also to help create the much-needed fiscal space to support the country's significant development and, of course, security initiatives. We'll quickly go on a break now, and when we return, it will be time for NC4 to watch.
And to wrap things up, here are a few stories we're keeping our eyes on. Now, the International Monetary Fund Board will meet on July 18 to review Kenya's request for an additional 28 billion Kenyan shillings in emergency loan, even as the country fell behind on key commitments, including the establishment of a central payroll. The IMF revealed that Kenya has requested certain waivers on the program, indicating the country has failed to meet some of the conditions set in April last year when the fund approved a $2.34 billion loan to the country. The Republic of Madagascar has received its third insurance payout of around $797,000 from the African Risk Capacity Group and the African Development Bank following drought conditions which affected the country during 2021 and 2022. Madagascar took out drought insurance through the African Development Bank's Africa Disaster Risk Financing Program, which financed half of the premium. The program is providing financial support for the insurance premium for 5 years up until 2023. Now, Zimbabwe's central bank has approved a regulation that will allow the country's power utility to bill the exporters of goods and services in dollars, euros, and other foreign currencies. Exporters and partial exporters will have to pay their electricity bills at the international cross rate, according to the exchange control order published in the Government Gazette. An exporter is defined as a business that, on average, every quarter exports 80% or more of its total output in goods and services produced or provided by it in Zimbabwe, for which it receives any foreign currency. And finally, state-owned port and rail monopoly Transnet has signed a major 5-year credit facility to the tune of $1.5 billion, around 25.5 billion rand, in its first internationally syndicated loan in almost a decade. Announcing the agreement in a notice on the JSE, the group said that the new credit facility is part of its 2022-2023 funding plan, with the funds earmarked for infrastructure and to also refinance existing debts. And that's the business we have for you right here on today's episode of Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining us. Follow us on social media. Of course, watch us on the platforms we're available. Download our mobile app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to join us at 12 noon West African time for News Central Now as we take you through the biggest stories here on the continent. I'm Tolulokwe Adileru Balogun. Have a good one.